22 years ago, one of the most horrific periods in human history was taking place in Rwanda. An estimated 800,000 people were killed in the span of just 100 days. Now, the whole country became a killing ground as the world stood by. Kelly Yoon traveled to Rwanda recently and joins us now with part one of her two-part series on a remarkable genocide survivor. Kelda.
Well, Tara, I was in Rwanda at the end of March, just before the anniversary of the genocide, which every year is a very sensitive time because so many survivors still live with the trauma. Here in London, the Rwandan community is very small. One of its members is a woman by the name of Debbie Asimwe. She was one of 10 siblings. The genocide claimed her entire family. Debbie still lives with the trauma, but has managed to build a new life here in London. And her mission now is to bring her orphan nephew and nieces to Canada. Tonight in part one, I will introduce you to Debbie, but first, a warning that some of the images in the story may be disturbing to some viewers.
The trauma is there. By all means, the trauma is there.
It's the type of trauma Debbie Asimwe has tried to distance herself from, starting a new life in London with her daughter Janet. Yet here, it still creeps up on her.
I wish my mother could be here and see the granddaughter. I was like, that joy of the whole family. I miss that part.
In March, I traveled to Rwanda. Driving through the country, I was struck by its beauty. But 22 years ago, it looked like this.
And I saw people cutting each other like with the machetes.
Debbie's family were Tutsi, so they were marked. And everywhere, those like them were slaughtered. Many of those places now memorial sites. I'm standing here outside Nyamata Church. It's one of the many churches here in the country that people flocked to during the genocide, thinking that it would be a safe haven, that they would be protected. But they were wrong. This church, like many churches in the country, became a killing ground. About 10,000 people were killed here, their clothing now piled up inside. And not too far away, in Terama Church, where 5,000 people were killed, including some of Debbie's relatives. What the militia did was that they came here and they used grenades to blow up parts of the church. And then after that, they entered the church and began slaughtering everybody inside. Everywhere, reminders of the tragedy, the country making sure no one forgets. At the time, Debbie happened to be staying at her cousin's house. When she returned home months later,
nothing except dead bodies.
And there was nothing to do but to keep going. So Debbie, then 19, tried to help others. Two of the orphans Debbie took care of, I met in Rwanda. Naomi says, I was trying to escape with my mom and sisters, but we lost each other. When I found them, they were dead. No words can describe the pain, Delphine says. I isolated myself. Friends got concerned, so they brought me to church. That's where I met Debbie. She became my parent. She helped to ease the pain. Years later, the women continue to struggle. Still, they sing praise.
I miss these girls so much.
Unlike Naomi and Delphine, Debbie's story took a hopeful turn.
We started to give announcements on radio, like, I'm here, is there anybody still alive? So that's how I found out my brother. He was in the hospital by then.
Turns out her brother Robert was badly injured but survived, playing dead as the rest of their family was being killed.
I cried years and years with him. And then I could make him repeat the same story every day. So assuming maybe he will change and say, oh, they are still alive, oh, they are somewhere. But the story was the same. Everybody is dead except me.
But eventually her brother would die too, succumbing to his injuries years later. And out of this loss, Debbie would gain a new purpose.
So I lost everything, but I was like, if I survived, there is a reason.
And that reason is in that photo. Those are her brother's children who were left orphaned after he died. Tomorrow in part two, I will continue Debbie's story from her brother's death years later to her decision to leave Rwanda and start a new life in Canada, and her mission now to adopt her brother's 4 children and bring them here. I'll also introduce you to Debbie's new friends in London who are helping her to reach that goal. Tara.
Yesterday, we introduced you to Debbie Asimwe, a survivor of the Rwandan genocide who is now living here in London. Well, tonight we're going to continue her story. In part 2 of her series, our Yoon tells us what made Debbie decide to leave Rwanda and start a new life in Canada, and about the mission she is now devoting herself to.
Mothers, daughters, sons, friends. Rows and rows of photos are lined inside the Kigali Genocide Memorial.
You can't replace a relative, a parent, a loved one.
Among those killed in '94, Debbie's mother and father and 8 of her 9 siblings. Debbie's brother Robert and his wife Sarah managed to survive, but their injuries so severe they could no longer work.
Every day you have to cry, but after crying you say, everybody is looking at me, so I have to be strong.
It took years, but eventually they would succumb to their injuries. Her brother in 2006, his wife Sarah just a year later.
That's when I said, I don't see what I still have here.
Overcome with grief and in need of a fresh start, in 2008, Debbie left for Canada with her daughter Janet. She had hoped to bring her brother's 4 children, now orphans, with her, but was met with roadblocks. That's when she made one of the toughest decisions of her life. She said goodbye to...
This is Mariam, this is Priscilla, she's 12. This is Cyrus. This is the Peace.
She left them in the care of a pastor, but before she said goodbye, she promised them they would be together again one day.
I miss them every day.
Now, in between her studies at Fanshawe and spending time with her daughter, Debbie is devoting herself to keeping that promise.
It's really huge.
It's an adoption process she didn't anticipate would take so long.
I didn't have an idea.
And the woman who helped others after the genocide was now in need of help herself. In London, she found it.
We all from different countries and different age, but we don't feel that.
No.
We're just sisters.
When I heard her, and she's sitting in front of me, and she's telling me that she's lost her whole family, I was really moved.
Debbie's friends, Linda and Lana, have been helping to raise money to cover the heavy expenses of the adoption. Lana donating pieces of her art to sell at fundraisers, and Linda, a singer, donating all proceeds from her CD.
I really appreciate these ladies to sacrifice their time from their family, and they are with me 24/7 whenever I need them.
And this past summer, some great news. The adoption was finally approved.
They're always asking me, when are they coming?
The answer, not as quickly as they'd like. The immigration process is expected to take 2 more years, but at least now it is mainly just a matter of time. And when the children finally do arrive, what Debbie wants most is to make sure they never forget their parents.
The firstborn, she understood and she remembered. I said, do you remember your dad, Miriam? Yeah, I remember my dad. He used to buy us candies. And she started to explain all the memories she have. And I said, can you share that with your sibling?
And of course, they will also have a new Canadian family to shower them with love.
If they come here, I know they will have wonderful aunties.
In the meantime, Debbie is busy raising money. The cost of adopting and bringing the children here will be at least $40,000. She says her friends and her church have been a huge help, but there is still a long ways to go. So for anyone who would like to contribute, an account has been set up at TD Canada Trust. There is also an online fundraising campaign at the website youcaring.com. Now, all of that info can also be found on our website, london.ctvnews.ca.